through here, feel free, like Michael said, just to jump in if you have questions. We tend to go over a lot, and our project is heavy into process. And so if you have questions along the way, really about anything, feel free to jump in. So our project, This Earthen Door, which reimagines Emily Dickinson's herbarium, really began because we were interested, excuse me, interested and really concerned with the state of the world and climate chaos and the rapid changes we've seen to our environment in our lifetime. And as artists, we always worked with the natural world. And that's sort of how we both have been working independently within the main themes of the natural world. So we knew we wanted to address issues around the environment, not just with the subject matter, but with material as well, which is what you're seeing here. And we wanted a more eco-friendly way of working within photography. So our decision to collaborate falls within a long tradition of women working together, non-competitively, and for a better good, and for companionship, and for reaching higher goals together. We've also talked a lot about leaving the world a better place for our children.
So This Earthen Door began 5 years ago now, in the early days of the pandemic, actually. Leah and I have been friends since graduate school at the San Francisco Art Institute. And here we are back then with our friend, teacher, and mentor, photographer Linda Connor. um, we had talked about collaborating for a number of years, and busy lives, it didn't happen. So it took the pandemic to get us started. And based on our shared love and engagement with the natural world, with archives, with collections and literature, and with working in this project with science and experimentation, we landed here making work about a great American poet and naturalist, Emily Dickinson, who was born in 1830. She's known now for her avant-garde verse punctuated by dashes and spaces, as well as her reclusiveness. She's also featured in the recent popular TV series Dickinson, so a younger generation may know her that way, but she is a major figure in American poetry. And our project reworks her book of pressed plants called a herbarium, which is a forgotten treasure at the intersection of science and art that of plants she collected when she was a girl in and around the Dickinson homestead.
So what you're seeing on the left is Dickinson's original herbarium. So she would collect these plants, press them, and then place them, into this book. And what you're seeing on the right is our version made with the juice of pokeweed, which you may have growing right now. It's sort of the end of the season of pokeweed. And this project really lives at the intersection of art and science and literature with the gathering, growing, classification, and pressing of flowers. So Dickinson was really famous for being a gardener before she was known as a poet. Except for a few poems, she was only published after her death, and a third of her poems and half of her letters reference plants with personal and idiosyncratic symbolism, and really illustrating her strong connection to the natural world.
So Lee and I were together early in the pandemic, and we knew we were going to work with Dickinson, and we didn't know what process we were going to use or really how we would even collaborate. But we were reading books. We had a few books of her poetry, and we were reading her poems together. And I was actually reading out loud to Leah while we were eating chocolate, lounging, and these words jumped out of a poem. We go no further with the dust than to the earthen door, and then the panels are reversed, and we behold no more. It's a stanza in a larger poem, but that was a central moment when naming the project happened from the earthen door and set everything in motion while we were experimenting with how to do our imagery. And the earthen door you'll see here on the right in a recent show we had are all of the earthen brown tones from our project, not necessarily made with brown plants, often made with colorful blooms, but when they draw in the page, they turn these colors. And pulled from the poem these words for our title, We Can But Follow to the Sun, poem 920. Uh, and the poem alludes to Dickinson's own garden, which was for her a door to earth and delights, as well as the door to mortality and immortality. Dickinson grew up in the small town of Amherst, Massachusetts. You may have been to see the now museum, which was her home. Um, at age 9, she began helping her mother in the garden. And the homestead, you'll see right here is during the pandemic, this photo was taken. So it was kind of a bit of a meager garden. It's tended to by volunteers, but this is the garden as it exists now. We don't have any records of the garden as it existed then, but pieced together, they know a lot of what grew there. And the homestead had acreage, large vegetable gardens, orchards, was renowned for having these rose arbors as well as a magnificent flower garden. And Emily took over the flower garden while her sister Lavinia took over the vegetable gardens in their teens.
Whoops, sorry about that. So here we have a portrait of Emily Dickinson that they think as a teenager, which is when Dickinson really began her herbarium. They think around the age of 14. She then went on to study botany at Mount Holyoke College, which was the most rigorous program for girls in the country at that period. And not only was her herbarium her first book, it really set the stage for all of her writing about nature in her poetry. And here we are on a little road trip. So Amanda and I created our own residency in the early pandemic when most all other residencies were shut down. We rented a little cottage that you can see here on the right, close to the Dickinson homestead in Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, which is a beautiful little town in Western Mass. And we thought we wanted to work with the anthotype process during the self-imposed residency, but we hadn't fully committed to it. But as soon as we walked in and poked around, we noticed that there was a loft full of silk flowers in this cottage that we were staying in. And so we really took that as a sign to keep moving forward with that process. And this is again the kind of backside of the Dickinson homestead. So when we visited, it was early COVID, early pandemic, and the museum was closed. The gardens were a bit overgrown here. These are rhododendron trees. And, you know, it was great to be able to still walk around and explore, but you can see here it wasn't really tended to at that time.
So we began the work of reanimating the herbarium pages. There are 66 herbarium pages. And we decided to use an early photographic process known as the anthotype. Anthotypes use plants or flowers to create a photographic emulsion on paper that then gets exposed to ultraviolet light. And antho in Greek means flower. So it's a flower-based, plant-based process.
So here's this beautiful book of Dickinson's that is really an exquisite work of art in and of itself. And one of the botanists that we worked with pointed out how well that she pressed and placed her flowers. Really a pretty remarkable feat for a teenager.
The anthotype process was invented around in 1842, around 1840, in the 1840s, in efforts to create color photography. Was abandoned for other things. This was also the time that Dickinson was working on her herbarium. And credit goes to Sir John Herschel on the right, who coined the word snapshot. He's known as the father of photography, one of them at least. And he's credited as making the first anthotype, but we also like to credit another person who is Mary Somerville, who was a friend of Herschel's and was working alongside him in Scotland. She was a Scottish Victorian polymath, mother of 6 children, and prolific scientist and inventor. She couldn't publish her findings because she was a woman, so she published circuitously through a letter to Herschel, but they were in conversation the whole time. So she doesn't get the credit, but we like to include her since at the center of our project is Dickinson, another important woman who was sort of eclipsed for a while as being an eccentric and recluse and has now sort of made her way back to the center.
So here you have our gardens. Amanda and I split the 66 plates of the herbarium in half. Amanda grew 33 of the plants in her garden in Quebec, Canada, and I grew the other 33 in my garden in North Carolina. And these plants are represented in Dickinson's herbarium, and they were also grown by Dickinson or collected by her on her walks in around Amherst and near the homestead.
We made both positives and negatives. We didn't know what the images would look like, and we felt we needed to cast a wide net. So we did use 66 flowers, one for each page of the herbarium. And the herbarium is comprised of 424 different specimens from the Amherst region, which Dickinson celebrated as children and as friends. She carefully arranged and labeled every plant with an artist's sensitivity to scale in the herbarium using Linnaean and common plant names. And we knew that we would need permission from Harvard, who now has the digitized herbarium online. So we were able to get permission to use the plates, and we converted them to large scale negatives that you see here, both the positive and the negative.
So here you have an image of the kind of process of making an anthotype. So this is again made with the berries of pokeweed. The traditional way to make an anthotype is with a mortar and pestle and alcohol to extract the pigment. In our project, we created the emulsion by crushing up flowers or plant material combined with alcohol, usually Everclear. And that creates a clear liquid that then you can coat onto paper, which is what you see on the far right. And then you can just keep building up the color until you get it to what you want. So you'll just let it dry, keep coating, let it dry. So you can kind of see the process. Plucked the berries, put them in the mortar and pestle, added the alcohol. You really mash it up, and then you can coat the paper to get the desired color. This is, the pokeberry, which is a toxic weed, but it makes a really beautiful, bright pink pigment and one that has a lot of staying power. Amanda and I were together. Was it last weekend? I don't know. It's blurring together. Last weekend in upstate New York, doing a little mini residency. And we pulled out our old anthotypes to look at them because they do fade. And although the pokeweed has faded some, it's still a very vibrant pink. And so it's great to know that, this one has some degree of staying power. The images are exposed to UV sunlight, and sometimes they take hours, others take months, depending on the flower and the season, the time of year, and the location. So when we started this project, Amanda was up in Quebec in the summer, and I was in North Carolina, which have very different, as you know, temperatures. And hers were taking much, much longer up in Quebec, and mine were happening very quickly in the sun and the humidity in North Carolina.
Apologies for the ambulances and sirens here in Brooklyn. Um, so how do we make our prints? And how do we keep them and have them not fade? We have been scanning our original anthotypes and working with them as a digital archive because of this fading that is inherent with the anthotype process. However, this is really very natural to us because we've been working with the digital herbarium at Harvard and not her original book, which is just too fragile. Nobody can see it. It crumbles if handled. So this unique attribute of the photograph to document something that is lost or disappearing was a driving force for Leah and I when we were discussing early stages of the project, um, we knew that we could never see Dickinson's herbarium in person, but we could interpret it and we could use the photograph, we could use photography to have the book for ourselves and also share it with the world. So, and in doing this, incorporating both analog, early photo process and current digital tools.
So here we're going to introduce a little bit of an exhibition that we just closed recently. You can see September 7th at the Brandywine Museum of Art in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, which was a really beautiful kind of merging of, for us, we felt like our project with their mission and their beautiful setting. It looks right over the river. They are an institution that also has a conservancy, which was really, again, great to be able to work with them of this mission of thinking about art and nature and how they sort of work together. For us, we had over 50 pieces from our 100 that we have in this really extensive project. And it kind of weaves the story of Dickinson, ecology, and photographic process together.
So the project is now in 5 years. We was several years in the making of the early stages of the images. And as we were working on it on the project, we began uncovering so much about plant science and interesting facts about Dickinson. And our engagement with plants both became much deeper, as did our understanding of the rich environment that Emily Dickinson lived in, her involvement and devotion to nature. We began doing some deep research. We, as artists, we just didn't have all the facts. So we began researching gardens and plants, the subject of ecofeminism and ethnobotany, as well as the history of color and color theory. We wanted to connect more with plant science and other plant stories, and that was a driving force in kind of a two parts to our project. The question for us became not only how to artistically remake Dickinson's herbarium, but how might we use her archive, the herbarium, as a portal between the past and the present. We wondered what could we learn from Dickinson's herbarium because we actually know that it's not considered like other herbaria, Henry David Thoreau's, for example. It's not considered to be a great work of science with a capital S. It doesn't have a lot of data that, for instance, would contain charted notes on flowering times or where a specimen was collected. It is missing all kinds of information, dates, the season. Some are even mislabeled. Some of the specimens, like poison ivy, was labeled as climbing bittersweet. But she was, after all, just a teenager when she was putting it together. But we wondered how can this object, this really exquisite object of deliberate attention to plants, wake us up to the natural world and shed light on plant science and the insane rapid pace of climate chaos we're seeing in our planet today.
So we like to show this slide because these are our photographic papers before they get exposed to the sun, really just pure extracted pigments from plants. The second part of our project are data drawings. So we take the science and we create visuals based on the information, consulting with our botanists, collaborators, really to create a research project about the plants that we are working with. So here you see two of them. On the left, this is made with snapdragon from the petals of snapdragon. And on the right, this is made with delphinium. So here you can see, sometimes with these anthotypes, you might be able to see her handwriting. You can see it a little bit here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. But these are, the way that the Dickinson would label with her own handwriting, each of these. And this really led to the second part of our project, which was to collaborate with two scientists. Here you see a couple of our data drawings. So on the right, these are all of the roses that Dickinson would have grown on her property. And over here, which we'll talk about in a little bit, these are all the pollinators.
Right. So we call those data drawings chromataxis for sort of a color classification that has each a short theme that it's focusing on. Um, and this here we have a little view on the background, which we took from her bedroom, her iconic rose wallpaper redesigned by Mary Lou Davis. And in her bedroom, it looks sort of like the traditional wallpaper you'd see. It's a lot smaller. I think we went 4 times bigger here to recreate, and a sample from the herbarium paired with ours again.
So to give a little context here, we partnered with two botanists, one of them seen here in the middle slide, biology professor in St. Louis and research associate at one of the largest botanical gardens in the world, which is the Missouri Botanical Gardens. And Kira, who I met at a virtual residency through Dumbarton Oaks in Georgetown, seemed like the perfect fit. And we wanted to kind of invite her and her students into the project. So at the early stage, her students helped do a lot of the research, and you can see us in a photograph with her students there. So, like Amanda said, we've been calling these chromataxis, chromo for color and taxi for taxonomy, which means classification. So each chromataxi is paired with a short writing piece about its big given theme. And here, I'll take this one. This is an image from our exhibition at the Missouri Botanical Garden, again in St. Louis, kind of Kira's home turf. And it's one of our installations. This was at the Sachs Museum there from our show in 2024. And again, it's one of the oldest botanical gardens in the US. It's a really beautiful place. If you haven't been, I highly recommend. And another one of our really, well, two of them, but one of our important collaborators, scientist Peter Grimme, who you see here. He's a botanist and a Dickinson scholar living not too far from Dickinson's homestead in Western Massachusetts. In the summer of 2023, here we are, where we presented at the International Emily Dickinson Conference with Peter Grimme and Marta McDowell, who was also really instrumental in our project. She wrote the book Emily Dickinson's Gardening Life, and that really became our Bible at the start of the project, which helped us identify which plants were growing at Dickinson's homestead, and really helped us figure out what we needed to grow and which overlapped. It was really incredibly useful.
So this is 2 pages from the books, a book called Nature's Palette, which we took as inspiration because color was so present in our work and really was a driving force to create these data drawings. The color, the non-synthetic color was just so incredible to us, what we were discovering that these plants could offer. So we took inspiration from 18th and early 19th century geologists Abraham Werner and Patrick Syme when in the world the necessity for a color classification system became apparent. Nothing existed, and a standard was needed for geologists and artists and anybody who needed to record color in any way. So on the right is a page from Werner's early, sort of basically the early Pantones, where he accords in each row a animal, then a vegetable, then a mineral descriptor. So in one of the lines, you can see Scotch blue is described as the animal would be throat of a blue titmouse you could compare with. The vegetable stamen of a single purple anemone, and the mineral would be blue copper ore. Because colors were fading, and if they printed it, you couldn't rely on the actual color. You could then look at blue copper ore to understand which color was being described. Anyway, is a really beautiful book. I urge you to take a look at it if you don't know of it already. And it just has like the history of color in a sweeping, epic narrative. And then
Excuse me, what's the
Re
name of the book again? What's the name?
Nature's Palette.
Nature's Palette.
Nature's
Thank
Palette. Yeah. And this one is just a funny slide. A friend of ours, Marcia Lipman, recently came to us with this, and she said, "This is from my toaster. It's from my toaster manual, and I feel like it relates to your project so much. And it's a kind of a little color taxonomy of each toast at the different levels and the color you'll get from the darkness of the toast." And we just thought it was so fitting and so sort of contemporary version that we'd include it. Here we have a spring exhibition, APAD, the photographer show in New York, our booth with Rick Wester Fine Art. We had a mix of prints and some installations along with our collector's box that you see in the center that we mentioned, which houses 100 prints from the project, the 100 prints, in two different slipcovers, dividing it into its two parts, the herbarium and the chromataxia. This is a detail. Leah, are you going to speak about this
Well,
one?
go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. It's a detail showing some prints, the installation, a color wheel sampling the colors minus the browns, the earthen door. So these are the colors. And then our endangered species is the one with the browns and the purple pop on top.
So this image is called "The Wind Begun to Rock the Grass." And these are all of the pollinators from the project that we used. So the data drawing refers to, the pollinators that would have been growing in Dickinson's garden. Our image includes 9 types of pollinators that would have frequented the 19th century homestead. And those include birds and butterflies and moths and bees and flies, wasps, wind, and beetles. And so the most common pollinator in Dickinson's Amherst garden, as true for most of us, are the bees. And that is this long line here. So that's all the flowers that bees would pollinate. The bees appear 110 times in her poem, which of course is the longest line. And then the shortest one, or one of the shortest one, is the wind pollinator. So you have these 2 little green swatches, and those are made, I think both of those with ferns, if I recall.
Yeah, they're the ferns.
And do you want to take this one, Amanda?
Yeah, sure. So here a little bit on the left, it's a bit hard to see, but is an installation of another color wheel we call Bloom as Result is the title. And it comes from a poem, Bloom as Result to Meet a Flower, but the title Bloom as a Result. And it shows the 4 seasons from the 66 plants that we use. So each plant gives a color, and the color represents the plant. And at the top, we have a pink pop of a Christmas cactus. The outer circle is the summer plants. The inner circle are spring, and then the bottom row are the fall blooms. And here we have another grouping of some herbarium images on the left with a chromataxi on the right titled "I'm Nobody, Who Are You?" from one of her poems. And all of our titles are taken from the first line of one of her poems. So I'm Nobody, Who Are You? And this one pulls together the plants that she misnamed in the herbarium. I mentioned that she got poison ivy wrong, was climbing bittersweet. So the plants she misnamed, along with their corrections by the former head of the Harvard Herbarium, the corrections are below, and then others are unknown. So
And now we're moving into a different exhibition that we had last spring. This one was with our gallery in Chelsea, Rick Wester Fine Art. And the introduction here, this was called selections from This Earthen Door. And on the left, you can see this image made with red salvia. And if you're interested, the gallery has the whole collector's box. So if you're in New York, Rick is in a building with a bunch of other galleries. It's a great space to go and do a little gallery kind of hopping. But he has the whole collection of the 100 prints, so you can always pop in and go and see all of the work. And these are the anthotypes, or a few of the anthotypes on the left made with the yellow marigold, the middle one with purple impatiens, and then on the right, this was actually made with purple pansy. But when it was mixed with alcohol, it turned this really beautiful blue color. So we don't always know what we're going to get out of a flower.
And another end of the gallery, we have a Dickinson portrait. It's an iconic portrait that we made an anthotype from. And this piece is called Fame is a Fickle Food. And the plants here are plants that would have been used in the Dickinson kitchen. They're edible flowers and plants that would have been used in baking or salads. And something that we did for one of our talks in the gallery was make her famous gingerbread recipe as little cupcakes with candied pansies that we candied ourselves and served them out.
So in this one, like I got a little out of order here, is another image from the exhibition. And you can see that we have these images that live both as prints and installations. So here you're seeing Bloom as a result, the one that Amanda just talked about, as a print on the wall, as opposed to in the show at the Brandywine, which lives as a large-scale installation. The middle piece here is a data drawing on love called Wild Nights, and thinking about all the different kind of categories of love. And then this one is made with the flowers of phlox.
And this is one of our pieces called To Make a Prairie. It's a big installation here. And these are self-compatible plants, meaning that they do not need an outside pollinator to reproduce. So they can self-pollinate, and which is a fantastic thing for survival. But also in terms of the ecology of that is that the genetics become thinned out, so they become more vulnerable over time if there are not outside pollinators, widening the genetic code.
So here we're jumping back to the Brandywine. We wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of commissions that we made, site-specific pieces based on the ecology of the Brandywine region. So we focused on kind of two stories. One were invasive species of the Brandywine region, and the other was the tree restoration. So you're seeing here images or pigments collected from the different trees from the Brandywine region.
Brandywine has a conservation mission at the center of at the heart of the way the museum functions. And here you see it has two preserves, the Laurels and Waterloo Mills. One is run by Caleb Meredith and the other by Kevin Freiberger, who ended up being instrumental in making these pieces, talking to him and getting research, walking around, collecting, foraging. Kevin was really instrumental, and he is the natural resource manager at Waterloo Mills. The Brandywine has over 70,000 acres of conservancy land, so it's the big jobs.
And here you see the piece, both pieces mounted. So on the left, our Talk Not to Me of Summer Trees, again, titled after a Dickinson poem. So we collected leaves and needles from the Waterloo Mill 187-acre property, the preserve, in both the fall and the summer that overlap with trees that would have grown on the Dickinson's property or that were included in the herbarium. So there were 14 trees in total, and we made what we call washes and rubs. So the washes have the more painterly, the rubbing have the more kind of mark making, almost drawing element to them. And we chose to focus on the trees due to the mission of the Brandywine in repopulating the trees that were lost during the historic flooding of Hurricane Ida. And we were really excited to recently the museum acquired this piece, so it will live there and hopefully, come out periodically. But we love this idea of this kind of merging of the mission and the artwork. The other piece was called Estranged from Beauty None Can Be, and there we focused on the invasive species of the Brandywine region. So for the first time, we actually collected plants and we pressed them ourselves, unlike the Dickinson anthotypes that we worked with the digital herbarium of plants that Dickinson pressed. We were able to actually go through the process of pressing plants, and then, of course, extracting the pigment from those.
So here we have winged, we have Estranged from Beauty, None Can Be, a Norway maple, pigment, and the Norway maple plant, as well as wineberry pigment and the wineberry plant. Again, on the left, the plant and the pigment, and on the right, plant and pigment. Okay, so we are coming closer to the end here. We did want to highlight our book that really our project was engineered, or the catalyst was to make a book of Dickinson's book that we could hold in our hands. And this book was published last summer by DATS Press in South Korea. They make incredible books that are sort of a cross between an artist book and a trade book. They have the elements of the hand. They're smaller publications, but they're really beautifully executed. It's sold out at the press, and I think Leah and I have maybe 2 or 3 rare copies left. And
so part of what we wanted to include in the book was this little piece of handmade seeded paper with a poem on it to make a prairie, which reads, "To make a prairie, it takes a clover and one bee, one clover and a bee, and reverie. The reverie alone will do if bees are few." And because it's a Korean press, and they really felt like they had an audience for it, they wanted to print it both in English and Korean, which we thought was a really lovely addition to this kind of global way that people love Dickinson. So we commissioned a local artist in North Carolina in Raleigh, Anne Marie Kennedy, to make 1,000 seeded pieces of paper with little wildflower seeds that would have grown, that will grow flowers if you plant them. And these would have been, these are seeds that are native to Western Massachusetts. So, ideally, you can take that little handmade seeded paper and plant it and water it, and it will grow flowers. And here are a couple of pages in the book. On the left is made with the purple hyacinth, and on the right is elderberry. And on the left, again, these kind of interesting shifts in color, purple verbena, which makes this kind of beautiful green tone, and then purple columbine. So you can really see that, a purple flower does not always give you a purple anthotype. Do you want to go, Amanda, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I think this gives us a chance just to mention how special DATS Press is. Here we are working on site, working on the book. We were able to travel there for two or 3 weeks and work on the post-production of the book, which is fantastic to work with their designers and handle the papers and see the prints come in, the color matches, and talk about all of the things. Then a lot actually foments and happens in those moments and in collaboration. So we were really fortunate to go. I would also say that DATS has a mission that really does include ecology. They have a museum on a mountain in nature, and the setting of that is one of serenity and sort of touching into transcendentalism. So for us, this was like a perfect marriage of publisher and book.
Amanda, how did you find them? Did you know about them and submit a book proposal, or did you
No,
work with an agent? How did you find them?
well,
Because it's
I had.
perfect. I have the book and I love it. I just,
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Donna. I had already published two books with them. I had known the publisher for over a decade. She had gone to the San Francisco Art Institute where Leah and I studied, and Linda Connor had been a teacher of hers. So we were introduced, a decade before. So I already had that relationship, and they already loved Emily Dickinson. They had several herbaria. So it was just like a meeting of the minds in this case. Yeah, really aligned. Were you going to talk about the site-specific piece, Leah?
Yeah, so here while we were sort of on press, we stayed about, I don't know, roughly an hour away outside. So the press is in the city in Seoul. The kind of residency and museum are, I don't know, 40-ish minute bus ride outside of the city. And on this beautiful mountaintop, and they have their really incredible, beautiful contemporary museum out there. There's gardens. There's just this kind of synergy of, again, kind of mixing the art and the natural world. So we wanted to make a site-specific piece while we were there, which is what you see here. So we collected flowers, plants that overlapped where we were staying in the Jinsei Valley on the mountaintop to Dickinson's herbarium. So these are the plants that cross over between. And we made that while we were in kind of in residency there, and then that found its way into the book. We also led a couple of workshops while we were there. They have a really beautiful space to work in, and had a great time. We've been doing these workshops in different locations. We taught a workshop at Penland this last summer, which was great. If you haven't been to Penland, I highly recommend it, in the North Carolina mountains. And so here we taught a workshop on the anthotype, and again, collecting flowers there. They have a beautiful greenhouse, so it's really easy to get, incredible color out of the flowers there.
Okay, this is a bit of a silly one, but this at the heart of this project is the idea of collaboration. We've been collaborating with scientists, with Dickinson scholars, with Dickinson, that holding the hand of a ghost, as well as collaborating with each other, obviously. And Leah and I have just been, we feel so fortunate. We really have been in alignment with our decision making, our inspiration, our conversations. It's just like we sort of always agree. And weirdly, we also often agree on what we're going to wear without talking about it. And this was just at APAD. We showed up with the same black and pink shoes, which made us laugh. It happened. Has happened dozens of times. I'm not joking. But really, this collaboration across the arts and the sciences, working with the tenets of ecofeminism that highlight working together for a greater good. These are really have been central to the project.
So these are two images that we have in our collection of 100. And this is a kind of iconic silhouette of Dickinson that we have made with the flowers of the red daylily. And we chose this flower because it is often kind of used to identify her with her dark auburn hair. And our red daylily, as you can see here, turned purple once it was mixed with alcohol. And we show this both as a positive and negative, this kind of mirroring and thinking about our collaboration, and also in the way that it kind of repeats or responds to the way that we're thinking about the herbarium, both as a positive and negative. Here you have a piece of blotting paper. This was mine. We also have one from Amanda's that both made their way into the Brandywine show, which you probably saw, that lives as a large wallpaper. Um, and this earthen door really presents narratives that have developed across art and literature and science, and that examine the human connection to plants. Botany and art have a long history of integration as disciplines, and this work reflects that powerful collaboration. We post a lot about our project on Instagram, so you can certainly follow us on Instagram. We also have our websites here. And we feel that this collaboration has brought worlds together. United States, Amanda's Canadian. We've traveled to Seoul to work with DATS Press. We were in Taiwan this summer for the International Emily Dickinson Symposium, where we presented. And we feel this kind of urgent call to keep pushing and collaborating in these incredibly divisive time we're living through. So this project has really brought us a sense of hope and joy in many ways. And we hope it has for you too. We have a few things happening in the spring that we'll post about, a show that will open in February in Los Angeles at Gallery 12. We've got a show that opens in the spring at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, um, at the Cummer Museum in Jacksonville, Florida in the spring in February, for a group show there, Art in Bloom, and a number of other things. So
Looking into a collaboration with the Dickinson Museum for the
yeah.
summer. So yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be working with them this summer, which we're excited about. So that kind of wraps it up for us. I'm happy to stop sharing and we can just have a conversation or questions. I think we have, a few minutes left if anyone has any comments or questions or thoughts. We're happy to chat.
So you are like octopi. You have so many balls in the air in all your hands. How do you find all of these museums? I mean, it just feels like, I know it's a lot of hard work and you've been working on it for over 5 years, but to find these places that are little jewels around the country and the world that are the perfect connectors, collaborators. How does that happen? You just get handed from person to person after you, is it a chain of relationships? Is that what's going on? Or is it Emily? Is it her ghost that's doing?
We think it's all of the above. I mean, I think we have felt very well, we've worked very hard, I will say that, for 5 years, but we have also felt like in many ways this project has just led us to the right people and places, collaborating, from the beginning, collaborating with Peter and Kira and Marta, and starting with the exhibition at the Sachs Museum at the Missouri Botanical Gardens, and also presenting our work at art fairs. We were at photo fairs, which is where Tom Payton, who is the director at the Brandywine, saw the work and really, to his credit, thought this would be the perfect installation exhibition there. Certainly APAD too, is a great way to connect with a lot of people at once. But we do feel like this kind of lovely synergy of art and science. And so, we have, yeah, we have been lucky, to be, included in these exhibitions. And we are also trying to really carve out this kind of way of making work for institutions that is thinking about their local ecology. And so we're sort of putting that out there as a way to say, like, let's just pay attention to the plants that are in our own backyards, and how do we think about them? How do we talk about them? So these site specifics that we're doing, we're trying to do more of those. That Dickinson's garden and herbarium are always at the kind of forefront. But as we think about what does that look like for us now, as a contemporary herbarium and just paying attention to plants, which, we don't do enough anymore.
Right.
And
Well,
I'd also add that we are kind of actively brainstorming where should this project go? Like who have we missed that would be a good fit? And we just recently were together and we just did a big long list of like time to do some outreach because it is a project that has so many different audiences. So we feel like there's just so much conversation to be had in different pockets. And that is really kind of at the root of it is connecting outwards. So, well, yeah, some things have landed in our lap and others were like, how can we drive this into different directions? Because there's different audiences we'd love to tap into.
For sure.
Absolutely. So your print run was 1,000? Is that what you did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could plant that card. I'll have to think about that next spring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still time. I think it should stay, it should stay fresh for you to plant it still. Yeah. I know it's hard for people to part when we tell them it's like, oof, do I part with it or, keep it as part of the book or do I see what comes from that? Yeah.
That's planted one and we saw the shoots come up. So we never saw the flower, but they sent it to us.
Yeah.
They're like, yep, they work. You can plant it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Alfie did have a question for you from a while back. Did you ever mash any of the needles and leaves to coat the paper?
Yeah, we did, especially in the Brandywine, those greens, we were doing needles and leaves for the tree project because we weren't using tree blooms, we were using their leaves. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, really all the parts of the plant, work and will give you a different color. And it's kind of astonishing, just little shifts in, is the bloom brand new or is it at the kind of end of its life cycle? That will give you a different color. So, the thinking about if we were trying to repeat a color, it's often very hard because what might be a daylily color in Quebec, where Amanda was, might look different where I am in North Carolina. And so it's just interesting that, they're unique in many ways, but that certainly is one of them.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Well, if not, we'll call it a day and wrap it up. If you get a chance next month, November 15th, we have Hannah Altman joining us.
Oh, I should mention, yeah, Hannah. So we are in a show right now at Candela Gallery. And Hannah's work is up right now. Yeah, it's a great show and her new book. Yeah.
So if you get a chance, stop by.
Great.
Otherwise, enjoy the weekend.
Great. Thank you so
all.
much for your time.
Michael, for
It was
hosting.
lovely. It was really lovely. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Very interesting. Thanks.
You're welcome. Bye.